sun keeps shining all through the day, and this land that we all love, God gave us the wood and the water, blessed by the moon and stars above, yeah. Sweet, sweet Jamaica, ooh, beautiful Jamaica. Every day feels like a holiday. Sweet reggae music playing, needles from a random day. Sweet, sweet Jamaica, oh, Jamaica. Irie, Jamaica, yes. Sweet Jamaica, our land we love. Jamaicans, we are number one, world leaders and champions, prophets and musicians, out of many we are.
The Government People's National Party, serving in that post from 2008, is a commissioner of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, a graduate of McGill University in Montreal and the University of Florida in Gainesville. Minister, we thank you for enduring a flight delay today. We thank you for taking time from your job back home. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Security Minister of Jamaica, the Honorable Speaker Bunting.
Thank you very much, Winston. Answer General. Oh, she's right beside me. I'm looking at the team downstairs. Consul General and team from the consulate, Don and team from Grace Kennedy Western Union Group, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I very much feel like a number 9 batsman as I'm listed on the lineup. Coming up to bat number 9 with a lot of runs on the board. And probably a very tired audience, so I'm going to try and go quickly through my presentation that I prepared, and I don't think more than 75% of my slides have already been covered. So let me move very quickly. Sometimes Jamaica is, I think this cartoon can represent Jamaica, all the potential, the big, strong athlete, but hampered by bureaucracy, crime, budget deficits, I think economic problems generally. And we always wonder, how can we move beyond that? And just in terms of crime, and let me put where we are in some context. If you look at homicides by region, you'd see Asia, Europe, Oceania, 3 in the region of 3 per 100,000. The world average is about 7 per 100,000. The Americas at 15, Africa at 17. When you come to Central America and the Caribbean as a sub-region, we actually have the highest homicide rate in the entire world. And that's, not a great distinction. There's some reasons for it. If you probably can't see the names on this slide, but if you start from your left-hand side, that bar chart to the extreme left is Honduras, then El Salvador, then Venezuela. The red bar is Jamaica. The bar to the right is Colombia, then Trinidad, Mexico. What is interesting in the region, the two lowest countries in the region in terms of homicides per 100,000 is Haiti and Barbados. Now they are at opposite ends of the GDP per capita spectrum. Barbados is one of the wealthiest per GDP per capita. Haiti is the poorest per capita, yet both have very low murder rates. What that says to me is that poverty by itself does not mean that you have high crime. As you see, they're about at the world average. The average for the Caribbean is about 30 per 100,000. By the way, this is Jamaica last year. This year we're actually improving on this, so we're actually lower than 40, we're in the 30s now, but I'll come to that slide. Historically, this chart, again, if you can see the axes, it really just is a line graph of homicides per year from 1970 to 2012. What is interesting, you'll see a spike here. That was the 1980 general election. But other than that, a sort of inexorable climb to 2010, and then we've seen a decline since that time. The cost of crime on our economy has been phenomenal. The estimates of a recent national security policy that we did was that had Jamaica not had an extraordinarily high level of violent crime for 4 decades, our economy, depending on the assumptions we use, would be between 3 times and 10 times the size it is now. Between 3 times and 10 times. If our economy was 10 times the size it is now, we would be right up there with any first world country. But since it has not been, since it has been extraordinarily high, what it impacts is our competitiveness in business and investment, impacts investor confidence, and it makes a company like Grace Kennedy such an exception. The truth of the matter is we should have 100 Grace Kennedys in Jamaica instead of just a handful. So what are some of the challenges we have to fighting crime in Jamaica? Well, first is the economic constraints. We're always hugely constrained in terms of what we can afford. That's sort of a chicken and egg situation. The second is globalization and technological advancements are used by criminals perhaps more quickly and more easily than even law enforcement. And so we find whereas 20 years ago or 30 years ago, to be a transnational criminal, say somebody who facilitated the transportation of cocaine from South America to North America, you had to have vast resources, millions of dollars to purchase cocaine, to arrange boats, people, contacts on both sides. Now we have scammers who are transnational criminals who need little more than a cell phone or a magic jar and some smarts. We're a transitioning society in the sense that we have some expectations of first world countries from what we see in the media, etc. But we still have some very, old-fashioned ways of doing things. And we have some dysfunctional elements of our culture. I like to tell audiences that I think Jamaica's real national hero or unnamed national hero is a Nancy. Jamaicans love a con artist. They love a con artist, a scam. And then of course we have our geographic position, which is the reason why Central America, the Caribbean, has the highest homicide rate in the world is that we're poised between the major cocaine producing countries and the major cocaine consuming countries. And that narcotics trafficking that's going through Caribbean and Central America, alternating largely between the Caribbean and Central America, is one of the major contributors to gangs, organized crime, and ultimately violent crime. And what is interesting is that over the past 10 or 12 years, we've had dramatic reductions in cocaine being trafficked through the Caribbean. 2001, it was estimated by U.S. authorities that 26% of all the cocaine moved from South America came through the Caribbean. By 2006, it was down to 10%. By last year, it was down to 5%. However, with the war that's going on in Central America, the war against cocaine trafficking in Central America, we're starting to see a shift. More emphasis is being now put on using the Caribbean again as a major transit point. So when I became the Minister of National Security about 16 months ago, I looked at this picture and I said, well, Jamaica, I think the Jamaican people deserve better than what we're getting. We don't want to be the number 4 country or anywhere near the top 10 of the world in terms of violent crime. And we set ourselves what used to be called in business school long time ago, a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. We wanted to reduce violent crimes, and in particular murders, to first world levels by 2017. And we set out a particular trajectory there of how we could get to that. And this is just one trajectory. Last year we were at 1,087 homicides, or 40 per 100,000. And if we reduce that by by anywhere between 10 and 20% per year, by 2017 we would be down to 12 per 100,000, which would be way less than the average in the Caribbean and very close to the world average. So this is what I set as a target for the ministry. Now, it's not important really whether we hit it exactly in 2017 or whether it takes us to 2019, but the fact is we need to understand that we have a huge step to make, and we can't keep doing things incrementally if we want to get there. We have to do things very differently. So what are some of the challenges to what we're doing? What is interesting, even though Jamaica has had such a high crime rate for 4 decades, we've actually invested relatively little in combating crime. So for example, this chart shows the number of security personnel per 100,000. And again, we use a comparative group in the Caribbean and Central America. To the extreme left is Colombia. They have 1,306 security personnel, and that's public security, military and police, per 100,000. Or put another way, 1.3% of their population is employed as public security personnel. And we go Honduras, Dominican Republic, Antigua, Trinidad and Tobago, and they're all about 1% of their population employed. When we come to the extreme right, which is Jamaica in the blue, we're down to 0.6%. We're less than half of the proportionate amount in Colombia. And why I use Colombia as an important comparator, about 7 or 8 years ago, Colombia had the highest murder rates in the world. And they have dramatically dropped it from 80 per 100,000 down to 30. And they're moving it, continue to move it downwards. And it didn't come by accident. It came because they invested enormous resources. The U.S. helped them, but they also invested a lot of their local resources. So what have we been doing in Jamaica? In particular, what have I been doing since becoming minister? Notwithstanding the constraints that we have financially, we've been focusing on building the numbers because it's very hard to be boots on the ground. You know, and where you have crime, you need police personnel. So just in terms of police alone, and this is leaves out the army, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've increased the numbers by about almost 25%, by 23%. Half of that have come in the last 16 months since I've been minister. And if you look at the army, you have similar increase in the numbers because we know we have to get the boots on the ground. We've also spent a lot more in terms of equipping vehicles. Last year, notwithstanding the tight fiscal constraints, we spent as much purchasing vehicles for the security forces as the 3 previous years combined. And giving vehicles to the police as a force multiplier and increasing their mobility. Now, one of the other challenges we face is this feature I call the dysfunctional element of our culture. Our popular entertainers tend to glorify criminality. There's no, way to pretty. So how do we respond to that? Well, one of the things we've done is start a series of public awareness campaigns, including stakeholder forums, much like this one, to debunk the myth and just let people understand what this is really about, this criminal, cruel, violent activity. We've carried these messages not just on traditional media, stakeholder forums, we're doing it in social marketing as well. We not only look at the crime control, but we also look at the crime prevention. And through the Ministry of National Security, we do a project called the Citizen Security and Justice Project. And one of our initiatives last year, we went into 50 inner city volatile communities, and we identified 500 at-risk youth who would be recruited by gangs, typical gang recruits, male and female. And we engage them on an on-the-job internship program where we attach them to the JDF engineering regiment. And we're teaching them construction skills. And we've given them 6 months, and the first batch has graduated. We've given them another 6 months. And what is amazing is at the intake, at the commencement, when you come into the room and the hundreds of these youngsters come in, you feel you want to hold on to your watch and your wallet because they look like a rough rope. 6 months later at graduation, you cannot tell them different than the soldiers because they're all clean cut, they're well dressed, well put together. And it just shows you what the right socialization can do for some of these people. And we're looking to expand that program going forward. So, quick summary of some of the results we're getting last year. Serious crimes, sexual offenses, acquisitive crimes were all down 7%. The totals of murders was the lowest figure in 9 years. This year, this is the first quarter, we're continuing to see reductions. Up to today, it was close to about 8% year on year compared to last year. We've started a unit called MOCA, the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Task Force. This unit is a unit tasked with tackling the lottery scam. It's the first fully vetted, sensitive investigative unit in English-speaking Caribbean. Basically what it means, fully vetted means every 6 months, every member has to do polygraph tests, they have to do background checks, they're continuously. It's also multi-agency. While it's primarily policemen and women, it also has members from military intelligence, it has persons from customs, tax administration, the financial investigative division of the Ministry of Finance, and we also have liaison officers with law enforcement from our international partners. It's a financially focused unit, whereas in the past when we've had special anti-crime units, what you picture is guys in ballistic vests and ballistic helmets with M16s. These are instead financial investigators. They're trained in forensic audit. They're trained in financial prosecution. Some of them are lawyers, etc. And what we're doing is, as you see the logo there, it says taking the profit out of crime. Because we're not just going for prosecutions and giving a couple of years in jail. What we're doing is going for the high-end villas, SUV, all the illicitly gained assets. We're taking the profit out of crime. And I just took a few clips here, but you'll see some of them, for example, mocha causes major stress for criminals, and various busts that they're doing, etc. I tell people after, this unit just started in September last year. It was, an initiative of my administration. I believe in another few months, it will not be known as mocha, but it will be known as maca. Even this year, so far, this unit has had some major successes. Terry Bucknell, major money launderer in Montego Bay. Rooksy, the leader of the discipline group, arrested again, wanted for responsible for over 70 murders. Justin Ogilvy, the Dudos's business partner. We busted a guardsman armored vehicle transporting 66 kilos of cocaine. And these are all intelligence-led. 2 weeks ago, we had an operation against lottery scammers in Florida, where we arrested a joint operation with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. But when we drew down on some criminals up here in Florida with mocha t-shirts on, the expression was from us. I just wanted to know I'm quoting. I think the criminals were surprised that we had that kind of reach, and the level of cooperation with U.S. law enforcement has been described by the U.S. ambassador to Jamaica as unprecedented. And sometimes we despair because we may think that we're not making any progress in this fight against crime. And let me just show you on this chart, if I can get it a little bigger. But the two bars, I'm comparing 3 years ago, 2010 to 2013. When I was doing the research for this presentation, I just looked at where we were 3 short years ago with murders and serious crimes. In 2010, up to January 1 to May 19, we have had 671 murders. This year, we're down to 391. So we've had a 42%. Now, 391 is still way too high. Still way too high. But for those 280 less persons murdered, it makes a lot of difference. That's 2 per day lives saved, 2 lives per day saved. So we are making progress. The trend is in the right direction. We're also combating this with legislation. Last year we passed some important pieces of legislation. The Evidence Special Measures Act, which really allows us to witnesses to appear in court in Jamaica by audio-visual link. So particularly this helps scammers, victims rather, who are typically elderly persons who would want to travel from Maine or New York or wherever it is to come to face, to give evidence in court in Jamaica. This is will allow them. We also passed earlier this year the Law Reform Fraudulent Transaction Special Provisions Bill, which is generally known as the Anti-Lottery Scam Bill. It was passed to create offenses specific to lottery scamming, and it carries very hefty penalties, 15 years, 20 years imprisonment for doing this. Of course, you know, it allows for when, for example, you move from scamming to threatening and intimidating, then you now have aggravated damages. You can go up to 25 years. This coming year, we have an aggressive legislative agenda, anti-gang legislation, DNA legislation, doing some mergers, and of course, all of this is being done to complement an economic program of reform and adjustment. But as I like to tell my colleagues in the cabinet, and in particular the Minister of Finance, all the studies and all estimates that have been done show that the number one impediment to rapid growth and development in Jamaica is the high crime rate. If we can successfully tackle that, I'm convinced that the Jamaican economy will take off. So we have a new IMF agreement. It has acknowledged that debt reduction is the key to our sustainable development, and it has a goal to reduce the debt to GDP ratio from 140% where it is now to 95% of GDP in 7 years. In coming up with this program, I think we try to balance, Cabinet tried to balance it across all the various sectors. There were a number of prior actions, the NDX, the National Debt Exchange, which basically called on people like Don to give up some of the value of his vast investments. Then we had a tax package to raise our primary surplus to 7.5%, which is quite high. And again, this was designed in such a way to minimize the impact on the very poor and the working class. And then we asked the public sector workers to face wage restraint because we're reducing our public sector wage bill to 9% of GDP by 2015-2016. All of these were done very quickly early in the year prior to the IMF agreement, which is now in force. But we're just doing the fiscal adjustment is not enough. We have to get growth. We have a number of major projects being worked on. The North-South Highway, for example, from Ferry to Ocho Rios, being built by the Chinese at no cost to Jamaican taxpayers. $600 million US. The first, it's being done in 3 legs. The first leg, which goes from Babwa to where is it? Bunting, I believe, will be finished by the end of this year, and all 3 legs will be finished in 3 years' time. That's going to make a huge difference in commuting time across Jamaica. We have a logistics hub project which has to do with major investments, particularly in our ports. We have tenders out for 3/4 million square feet of ICT space, and the GPS also their final phases of well, I should say GPS, Jamaica, because we have a structure where we've separated our generation of electricity from our distribution of electricity. And there's tenders out now which are being evaluated for another 360 megawatts of new generating capacity, which will use LNG as one alternative for fuel, but at a minimum, this should reduce our cost of electricity by more than 25%. So, ladies and gentlemen, this administration is doing everything within our resources to combat crime and to restructure the economy. And we really invite a partnership with all well-thinking Jamaicans within and without Jamaica. Jamaicans in the diaspora, public sector and private sector. And let me say, I want to use this opportunity to acknowledge the partnership with Grace Kennedy and in particular Davie, and to demonstrate, even though Dan was a minister of government in the previous administration, I can tell you he is one of the best Jamaicans and most well-thinking Jamaicans. And I would have been proud for him to serve in the current cabinet. I can't say that all of his colleagues will have got the same welcome, but we would certainly welcome him. And I want to thank Grace Kennedy, Western Union, for the work they're doing with these road shows. Thank you very much.